This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
The U.S. President George W. Bush arrived in Indonesia as part of a tour that includes several Asian countries. He discussed with his Indonesian counterpart, Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono, several topics which includes health, education, and the economy. Bush's visit sparked anti-American protests all over the country.
The calm around this mountain village of Bogor, south of the Indonesian capital Jakarta, did not reflect the noisy protests witnessed in the streets. Indonesians turned out in large numbers to protest the U.S. President George Bush's visit, which is expected to last 6 hours. The relationship between the two countries has recently improved, especially after Jakarta joined Washington's alliance in the so-called war on terror. Washington and Jakarta want to increase cooperation in science, health, and investment. Meanwhile, many Indonesians have expressed resentment towards strengthening their country's relationship with Washington, criticizing their president for being a U.S. puppet. Many Indonesians do not like the policies of the Bush administration. Thousands of Indonesians took to the streets in massive demonstrations to protest Bush's visit to their country.
وزيارة بوش لإندونيسيا فجرت غضباً شعبياً حمل الآلاف على النزول إلى الشوارع منذ أيام احتجاجاً وتلبية لدعوة.
The demonstrators arrived at the Bogor's presidential palace to make their voices heard by Bush. Meanwhile, the Indonesian Authority has deployed more than 18,000 soldiers around the headquarters of the Bush-Yudhoyono summit. The protesters held banners calling President Bush a terrorist and a war criminal. They also criticized the U.S. policy in Iraq and Afghanistan, as well as its policy towards the Palestinian people and the Iranian nuclear program.
في الملف العراقي عثرت الشرطة العراقية على 45 جثة مجهولة.
In Iraq, the police have found 45 unidentified bodies in various neighborhoods throughout the capital of Baghdad. In Hilla, 22 people were killed when a suicide bomber detonated a booby-trapped car amidst a group of construction workers. The security deterioration and its implications were the main topics in the talks held with the Syrian Foreign Minister Walid al-Muallim as he comes to Baghdad in the first visit by a Syrian official since the fall of the Saddam Hussein regime on April 9, 2003.
The security deterioration continues in Iraq, with people being killed and wounded. All this continues in a country that has not been able to stop the violence, which comes in all forms and is being committed by various sides. Today was like yesterday and will be the same as tomorrow. Iraq awoke to the sound of an explosion that went off here and another explosion there, in Sunni and Shiite neighborhoods, in sectarian violence, which can no longer be hidden from sight. A new wave of explosions and violence hit Baghdad and other areas of Iraq, killing at least 48 people and wounding dozens of others. In the center of Hilla, 100 kilometers south of Baghdad, more than 22 people were killed when a suicide bomber detonated his booby-trapped car amidst a group of construction workers in the Bab al-Hussein area in the center of the city. In southeast Baghdad, at least 5 people were killed and 32 others were injured when 3 cars exploded, one after the other, at a bus station. There was escalating violence in other areas of Iraq as well. The Iraqi police found 6 unidentified bodies in Ba'quba that showed signs of torture. Meanwhile, armed assailants shot and attacked a vehicle that was transporting many members of the Zarquch tribe, killing 2 people and wounding 7 others. The escalating violence in Iraq and the shocking loss of lives and destruction of infrastructure have forced political and military officials in Iraq and the region to reconsider their policies. The Iraqi government has begun to do some in-house cleaning. Washington and London have both started thinking about finding an honorable exit out of the Iraqi quagmire. In addition, Syria and Iran have both entered Iraq in the context of what is being called an American, Iranian, and Syrian alliance. This position was supported by the British Prime Minister Tony Blair, who recommended to his American counterpart, George Bush, to find a way to work with Syria and Iran to help control the situation in Iraq. Amidst these developments, the Syrian Foreign Minister Walid al-Muallim arrived as a guest to the Iraqis in the first visit to Iraq by a Syrian official after the invasion. According to the Iraqi government, Muallim's visit was a trial balloon to assess the desire of neighboring countries to help the Iraqi government impose stability in the country. However, many international observers believe that this visit was the result of the latest meeting between Walid al-Muallim and the former U.S. Secretary of State, James Baker, who heads an American bipartisan committee to study the situation in Iraq. The question remains, what kind of cooperation does Baker's committee, which is backed by the Bush administration, want from Syria and Iran in Iraq? And what conditions will Syria and Iran make for cooperating with Washington?
In Damascus, the former Palestinian Prime Minister, Ahmed Qurayh, had talked with some leaders of the Palestinian factions about the matter of forming a national unity government. Details from Ziad Haidar in Damascus.
Inter-Palestinian consultations began in Syria with the meeting of the former Palestinian Prime Minister, Ahmed Qurayh, and the head of the Hamas political office, Khaled Mashal. Neither side gave any information about the Israeli prisoner being held by Hamas. Both sides agreed that the ongoing maneuvers towards forming a unity government are acceptable and that the details are being discussed in Ramallah and Gaza, keeping in mind that the issue of international guarantees to lift the siege is the main source of relief for both sides.
We want complete understanding. Then we will announce this to all our people. I do not want to get into details. We are making efforts to talk about the new government. We reached an agreement on the main principles. We need specific implementations while following up on progress in getting guarantees, because these efforts aim to lift the siege on our people so that we can, God willing, turn a new page and ease the suffering of our people.
The atmosphere is very positive, with the international community lifting the siege as soon as an announcement is made about the formation of a Palestinian national unity government. Brother Abu Mazen will further confirm this.
Will the United States recognize this unity government?
The U.S. recognizes the Palestinian Authority, and this is the government of the authority, so it is natural for the U.S. to work with it.
Ending his tour in Syria, Qurayh met with Vice President Farouk al-Shara, who expressed that Syria is prepared to offer any possible support to help ongoing Palestinian efforts to form the government and put internal politics in order. Qurayh also met with Secretary Generals of other Palestinian factions with the aim of coming to an agreement on future steps to form the unity government.
Afterwards, we will need to put the Palestinian house in order. First of all, the higher committee, which was formed in compliance with the Cairo Agreement, must meet to activate the PLO, which includes the Executive Committee and the Secretary Generals of National Councils.
Steps toward forming a Palestinian national unity government overshadow all efforts aimed at improving the Palestinian situation in general. The main obstacle facing the Hamas-led government is obtaining international guarantees to lift the siege. Palestinian sources told Al-Arabiya that Arab and international leaders are trying to achieve this end.
زياد حيدر العربية دمشق.
Tens of Palestinian citizens formed the human shield in and outside the home of Wa'il Rajab, one of Izz ad-Din Qassam Brigade's military wing leaders, after the Israeli army threatened to destroy it. Dozens of children, women, and elderly went to the rooftop of Rajab's home to prevent the Israeli forces from destroying it. The Israeli army phoned the Rajab family telling them to leave their home and that it was about to be demolished.
Rocket fire at the western Negev continues. This morning, 7 Qassams were fired towards Sderot and surrounding areas. There were no injuries and no damage caused. Chief of Staff Dan Khalud said the army will find a way to prevent the rocket fire, but at the same time, the IDF must continue to act prudently to maintain its ethical standards in the conflict against the Palestinians. He said the use of force is not always the answer. In Beit Lahia in Gaza, dozens of Palestinians entered the house of terrorist Wa'il Rajab from the Hamas military wing. This after the IDF ordered his family to clear the home. Witnesses say that neighbors, friends, family members, and even passers-by went into the house in order to serve as human shields to prevent the Air Force from destroying it. 2 days ago, a group of Palestinians acted in a similar manner to prevent the home of a wanted terrorist in the Jabalia refugee camp from being destroyed. Major General Gershon Hacohen will investigate the IDF's use of cluster bombs in this summer's Lebanon war. Chief of Staff Dan Khalutz appointed Hacohen to head a commission of inquiry that will present its recommendations to him and to the military's attorney's office. Channel 1 revealed yesterday that the IDF used deadly cluster bombs against the explicit orders of the Chief of Staff during the Lebanon war. Reports and denials that national unity talks in the Palestinian Authority have broken down. Due to what is described as a lack of progress, the two main factions, Hamas and Fatah, have reportedly suspended talks on forming a national unity government. An advisor to PA Chairman Mahmoud Abbas confirmed that talks had been placed on hold because neither side was satisfied with the results. Allies of Abbas charged that Hamas must be more cooperative on the makeup of the government and its platform. Others said that the talks will soon be renewed and a unity government can still be achieved by the end of the month.
I want to confirm to you that the negotiations about the establishment of a national unity government are still going on in a positive atmosphere and at the highest possible level. There was yesterday a meeting between the President and the Prime Minister. There was a phone call between the President and Mr. Khalid Mash'al in Syria, which was very positive. And we are continuing to work on all the issues that still need to be resolved so that our people can see a national unity government very soon.
Lawmakers from the Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee added their voices to calls from left and right-wing MKs for the resignation of Defense Minister Amir Peretz. Today's criticism among defense panel members comes in the wake of Peretz's telephone call yesterday to Palestinian Authority Chairman Mahmoud Abbas. Yossi Beilin from Meretz and Yuval Steinitz from the Likud both called Peretz ineffective and demanded that he resign along with the government.
What we have heard today is that we should wait that the Israeli Defense Force will develop a new anti-missile weapon. It looks like a joke that we should wait, and the citizens of Sderot and of the Negev and Ashkelon and Ashdod should wait that the Israeli Defense Force will end this process. I think they are expecting those answers immediately. They should take the right decision, and it means to have a military operation, to invade or to occupy those neighborhoods. And the sooner the better, like we have done it in the West Bank in a Human Shields operation that brought an end to those terrorist attacks against Israel.
What were the strong words or suggestions that you made to the defense minister regarding the, let's call it a crisis, in the top levels of the IDF right now?
all of us look at the crisis, and we cannot sit idle, and especially the Minister of Defense. Therefore, I called upon him to examine very deeply the situation amongst the Israeli Defense Forces, and to find out either or not the Chief of Staff and the Supreme Command can yet lead the process of the lessons learned from the last war in Lebanon and the implementation of those lessons learned.
The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Louise-Arber, paid a visit to the Gaza city of Beit Hanun. Arber, on a 5-day trip to the region, spent time at the house of a family who had lost more than a dozen members of a shelling on November the 8th, when Israel says a mistake led to the barrage of artillery shells hitting the neighborhood. Talking to reporters, the UN officials described Gaza as suffering massive human rights violations.
I came here, first of all, to express my sympathies, my condolences, and to show the concern of the whole of the United Nations for civilians. That I think this speaks for itself, how exposed and vulnerable they are. The violations of human rights, I think, in these territories is massive, from economic and social rights to this vulnerability to this violence that is totally out of control.
More than 350 Palestinians, almost half of them civilians, have been killed since Israel launched an offensive in Gaza in late June. The Islamic Republic of Iran's broadcasting, IRIB, hosted today President Ahmadinejad, who paid a visit to different sections of the national Iranian radio and TV. The president told a news bulletin that Iran will celebrate self-sufficiency in nuclear technology by early 2007. The president also said the onus is on the IRIB as the national media to promote national culture, consolidate national unity, and enlighten the public on the global movement against justice. President Ahmadinejad went on to say plots are at work by the expansionist powers to form a cultural NATO and mount cultural invasion, adding the IRIB has played a pivotal role in foiling the destructive influence of the enemy. Along his inspection tour of the state radio and TV, President Ahmadinejad was then present at Jam Network News to visit a newly built JNN studio.
همگی خسته نباشید، دستتون درد نکنه. همیشه اخبار امیدبخش و شاد بدید ان شاء الله به ملتتون. سلام عرض میکنم خدمت همه ایرانیان عزیز هر جای عالم که هستند. هر ایرانی هر جای دنیا که هست در واقع نماینده فرهنگی ملت ایرانه.
President Ahmadinejad and his visiting Zimbabwean counterpart Robert Gabriel Mugabe chaired a while ago talks between high-ranking delegations of the two countries. The president said Iran stands ready to work closely with independent nations, including Zimbabwe, to secure more progress and serve the interests of the two nations. The Zimbabwean president, in turn, said efforts should be privileged by the two sides to display a stronger will to give two-way links a shot in the arm.
It is today that the UN Security Council is expected to discuss Kofi Annan's report on the establishment of an international tribunal to try the suspects in former Premier Rafiq Hariri's murder. And yesterday, the situation in Lebanon topped telephone discussions between the UN Secretary General and Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, as well as Iranian leader Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. Annan stressed on the necessity that Damascus and Tehran contribute to the stability and unity of Lebanon. But in Lebanon, attacks and counterattacks continued as Hezbollah leader Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah urged his followers to be psychologically ready to take to the streets in case a national unity government or early parliamentary elections were not achieved. In a speech on Sunday, Nasrallah said he and his allies would not accept Sanura's government to stay because it was controlled by U.S. Ambassador to Lebanon, Jeffrey Feltman. Threatening to go to the streets at any time, the Hezbollah chief said the protests would be performed through peaceful and constitutional means. Sources say, however, that street demonstrations are unlikely to take place before Thursday and that political settlement is still possible. Fawaz reports.
Hezbollah leader Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, in remarks broadcast on his party's Al Manar television on Sunday, called on his followers to prepare for peaceful protests to topple what he described as a U.S. government in Lebanon. Speaking before a group of supporters, Nasrallah said the Lebanese were faced with two choices to emerge from the country's political crisis. The first option, he said, was a national unity government. I am not going to talk about a third or more or less anymore, he said. A national unity government in which all the main political forces in the country could participate genuinely is needed, he added. The second option, according to Nasrallah, was early parliamentary elections. He called on those who claim to have the popular majority to have the people decide. He said, quote, "Let's take it to the people. No one is talking about weapons. No one is talking about riots. No one is talking about a coup, no one is talking about a popular uprising, and no one is talking about disobedience." Nasrallah stressed that he and his allies would not accept Sanura's government to remain because it was American-controlled. But he said that he would object to it through civilized, peaceful and constitutional means. Nasrallah added that his party must all be ready to take to the streets on the psychological and moral levels, pointing that the call for demonstration may not be made a week in advance, but could be a 24 hours notice, a 12 hours notice, or even a 6 hours notice. Nasrallah also called for any demonstration not to undermine stability and to avoid confrontation and sectarian dissent.
The Lebanese President IraqAbu reiterated that the meeting sessions held by the Prime Minister's cabinet were illegal, explaining that the opposition has the right to participate in governmental meetings when important issues are being discussed.
The Lebanese President IraqAbu said that it would be better for Lebanon to establish a national unity government and resume dialogue. During an interview with the Russian television, Lahoud said Hezbollah and the Lebanese Christian opposition leader Michel Aoun reasonably demanded that they be granted 1/3 of the seats in the cabinet, which would give them the veto power.
All is saying with the Aoun and the rest that we want, according to the parliament, there is 45% in the opposition. We want to have 45% in the government. That is democracy. And they accepted 1/3 plus 1, which means that the important decisions, according to our constitution, in the introduction, which is the most important part, they say that it is not anymore legal, any power in Lebanon that has not got all these inside. So now, not only that they made, a decision in the Council of Ministers which they don't have the right to convene, but as well the government now is not legal anymore.
Lahoud also accused the Minister of Justice, Shaib Raziq, and the Prime Minister, Fouad Senora, of violating the Lebanese constitution by not giving him access to the first draft plan for international tribunal to try the suspected assassins of the former Prime Minister Rafiq Hariri.
Because I was the responsible one to give me all the details. So he used to say, well, there isn't anything yet, they're still talking and there isn't anything important. Until the time when I knew that from the news that the first draft came. So I asked the Minister of Justice, I'd like to have this draft so that it will be studied and to be really fair according to our constitution and by experts as well. Because at the end, I'm going to sign this agreement. So he said, okay, but he didn't send it. It took more time until the second draft came about 2 weeks ago, and I knew from newspapers as well. So I said, I want it now. And I asked him to send it officially. And when it arrived, in the draft, it was saying that you should answer before such a date. And the date had already passed, and the president didn't know what was happening inside it.
President Lahoud praised the supportive position that Russia took during the Israeli aggression.
The former American ambassador to Lebanon, David Satterfield, has been accused of leaking U.S. intelligence information to Israel, but was acquitted and transferred to Pakistan. These accusations are buried in the White House.
بينما كان الجاسوس الأمريكي الإسرائيلي جوناثان بولارد
While the Israeli-American spy Jonathan Pollard was being sentenced for leaking important U.S. intelligence information, another man was covertly providing Israel with other intelligence information through the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, AIPAC, the largest Jewish lobby group in America. This man is David Satterfield, the former American ambassador to Lebanon. Pollard was sentenced to life in prison in the U.S., but Satterfield was acquitted from his accusations. This means that Satterfield was actually charged but later was acquitted for pure political reasons. He was transferred to Pakistan not as a diplomat but as a spy close to the Pakistani nuclear weapon program and al-Qaeda. Satterfield was acquitted from a list of charges on August 4, 2005, in one of the largest Israeli spying scandals. He was charged of leaking intelligence information to officials from AIPAC.
More than 250 Arabic and international companies took part in the International Kurdistan Fair in Al-Sulaymaniyah. It was also filled with hundreds of visitors from all over the country. Izzat Mohammed has the details.
The International Kurdistan Fair was opened in the city of Al-Sulaymaniyah. More than 250 local Arabic and European companies from about 30 countries took part in the fair. The president of Kurdistan, Najer van Barzani, helped inaugurate the event along with a number of other Kurdish officials.
Last year, we held the fair in Erbil. We called it the International Kurdistan Fair DBX. This year, the fair is in Al-Sulaymaniyah. What is important about this year's fair is the location we selected, in coordination with the Iraqi-American Chamber of Commerce. Thank God, about 370 companies took part in an area about 10,000 square meters. The number of countries is approximately 50.
The exhibit saw an enormous turnout from inside and outside Kurdistan, as well as from neighboring Arab countries.
Ushu Company from the United Arab Emirates took part in last year's fair in Erbil and now in Al-Sulaymaniyah. This company specializes in surveying oil fields and providing necessary equipment for oil wells and refineries. It's considered one of the biggest companies operating in Kuwait, Lebanon, Yemen, Algeria, and many of the world's countries.
I represent Fortis Company. We are joined by representatives from Sanyu and Klayman. We come from Lebanon to Kurdistan to encourage industry in this region.
The fair will go on for 4 days. Products unavailable in the Iraqi market will be prominently featured to enable Iraqi merchants to take a closer look and form commercial agreements with the companies that manufacture them. Azad Mohammed, Al-Sumaria Channel, in front of the International Kurdistan Fair, Al-Sulaymaniyah.
The views expressed on Mosaic are those of the participating broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. Please visit linktv.org/Mosaic for more information about these broadcasters or to view previous Mosaic programs, obtain program transcripts, or receive the weekly Mosaic Intelligence Report. Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Additional support is provided by the Feyerdahl Foundation, the Otto Haas Charitable Trust, and by committed Link TV viewers like you. If you value this program, please send your tax-deductible contribution to Link TV, either through the website or the mailing address listed on your screen. This program was brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. television network devoted to global and national news, with uncompromising documentaries and diverse cultural programs. Programs which connect you to the world.